Okay. Um, Let me start. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to this solution session of day 2 of the Beyond the Known conference. I'm happy you all tuned in. My name is Jens. I'm a communication advisor for GIZ, and I'm here with my colleague Stefan, who's a policy advisor also for GIZ. And today we are facilitating this discussion here. Yeah, I'm really excited that I can welcome you on this discussion on the WeCheck tool, improving service provision to women entrepreneurs. It's a very exciting topic. I mean, we actually heard it yesterday, and also from Irene, who talked about it, that many startup support schemes, acceleration programs, and funds are being awarded to all male entrepreneurs. And well, some of these differences can be explained maybe systematically by different founder backgrounds, business stages, business sectors, perhaps. But maybe there's also a gender bias within the organizations, right? And business development service providers have an interest to better serve women entrepreneurs, but sometimes they don't know how to do so. And this is where the WeCheck tool comes in. It's a tool that helps organizations to check how well their services target women entrepreneurs. And I'm really excited that we will hear more about this for the next 45 minutes. And for this, I have Virginia here on the stage. Virginia is currently the global coordinator at the ILO's Women's Entrepreneurship Development Program. She joined ILO in 2009, as I believe, and has been working a lot with gender issues at ILO. She's a Spanish national, fluent in English, French, Spanish, almost Italian, really exciting, and has tried different activities, sports, yoga, tennis, kickboxing, very active, very cool. I think if you have any new suggestions for sports, you can hit her up. And we are also here with Suleika from the Zamzam Foundation. I'm really happy that she can tune in here as well today. Zamzam is the largest national humanitarian and development organization in Somalia. And she will present their experience from the launching the WeCheck tool. Yes. And as a discussant, we have Charlene, who works for the African Development Bank, mostly covering French-speaking countries in West Africa. And she coordinates a team of gender experts that ensures that women and men benefit equally from the operations of the bank, so that women also benefit as users, service providers, and stakeholders. Yes, and that's our discussion partners today. I'm really looking forward to the presentation. And with that having said, with further ado, I give over to Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jens, and welcome everyone. Let me put up my slides, and you'll let me know if you can see it. Can you see it? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having us. And as Jens said, I'm always up for hearing about new sports that I can try out because I can never stick with one. So actually today, I think it actually fits really nicely with what we've been hearing in the first day of the conference. And then earlier this morning, I was listening in on some of the sessions. And so we're here to kind of present the WeCheck as a possible solution, or for you to consider as a solution. Now, the ILO has had a women's entrepreneurship development program for over 20 years, right? And over the last years, we've also seen a lot of other organizations and initiatives to support women entrepreneurs, to support micro entrepreneurs, etc. But then at the same time, we're kind of thinking, why are we not seeing greater change? I think actually David McKenzie alluded to some of this yesterday, right? And so In terms of our own mandate as the ILO Women's Entrepreneurship Development Program, we have a mandate to support and build the capacity of service providers and our constituents. And so how do we help them become champions of gender equality and offer adequate services to women entrepreneurs? We see in a lot of the research lately around randomized control trials and other impact evaluations that there's a lot of focus, and rightly so, on what is the impact on the women entrepreneurs and looking at what kind of combinations of different services that are being offered to the women and what kind of impact they're having. But we do find that there is a vacuum in terms of understanding what about the service providers themselves, in terms of what are they going through in terms of them changing what they're doing and how they're doing to serve women entrepreneurs. And that's where I think the WeCheck really comes in to fill a gap. What we see is that, you know, women entrepreneurs, and we've heard that along several of the discussions this morning and yesterday, that we have women entrepreneurs have specific needs that need to be addressed for them to unleash their full potential. On the other side, when we discuss a lot with service providers, them being financial or non-financial, what we often hear is, you know, that they're actually open, that they're not discriminating to anyone, that we're open to both women and men entrepreneurs. But is it that they're actually seeing women come in, or is it how are they actually making sure that those service provisions are responding to the needs of women entrepreneurs? And so how do we really address this gap between what women entrepreneurs need and the services that are being offered by the business support organizations? So the WeCheck, and I think Jens, you actually did a really great job, and I should maybe just skip this slide, but it's basically the WeCheck is an organizational gender self-audit, self-assessment, to try and make them be more gender responsive. In a very quick nutshell, what is it? It is basically 15 key assessment questions through which an organization walks through with the help of an internal team. An internal team is actually members, and you'll get to hear from Suleika, who was actually part of an internal team for the Zamzam Foundation. And it's a group that is put together with staff and management to go over those 15 key assessment questions, try and gather the information that will help them answer those questions and identify areas for improvement. And this is accompanied through what we've developed as an external facilitator. I call him or her in a way of like a coach, supporting that service provider to go through this assessment and really be there to ask the whys and okay, and so what does this mean, et cetera, et cetera. What we've been seeing in the cases we've been carrying out WeCheck is that it's usually a process which is about a 6 to 12 month process. And they basically look at three main areas of the organization. First of all, we look at the clients and the outreach. Who's coming into the organization? Who's actually getting the services? What kind of outreach policies and practices are you putting in place? Then you look into, okay, so what are those products and those services that you are putting out? How do they respond or do they not respond to the needs of women entrepreneurs? And then last and not least, it's not only just looking outwards, but it's also asking the organization to look inwards, to look at their own strategies, their own objectives, and even their own operations in terms of, you know, for example, if you come to a service provider and all the people in the front desk are men, then that can actually have consequences in terms of who actually ends up coming into that service provision. So looking at those three key areas through the internal team, the idea and the objective at the end is to really put forward an action plan. And that is an action plan that is developed by the organization in terms of how they see improving, they can improve their service provision. In our experience, where does it make sense and who are the organizations that are taking this up? We would say that it's best suited for, let's say, mid-sized public or private organizations. So if you're too small, it may be too much of an exercise. If you are too big, you may not get that concentration of efforts that are needed to kind of keep pushing this forward. We also see that it's important that it be organizations that support entrepreneurs or SMEs that are owned by both women or by men or by women. It's also super important that top management be fully on board. And it is part of the WeCheck process from our side, and also helping sensitize top management on why this reflection process is in their own interest. And last but not least, it's also important that the organization be able and be aware that they're going to have to let staff as that internal team take time to do the WeCheck process. I think it's always important, and that's a question that we often get when we're talking about WeCheck, what WeCheck is not. And so on the one hand, WeCheck is not one of those certificates that will ensure that you are gender responsive. It is a certificate that allows you to say, you know, we are committed to gender equality, and we are moving in that process. It's also sometimes we think, oh, you know, organizations will come say, okay, so what do we do? Give us options. It is not necessarily a predefined menu of solutions, because it is a process, and because those solutions need to come based on the organization's needs, on their resources, on what they're finding through the key assessment questions. And last but not least, we often think, oh, it's a people say, oh, let's just do the WeCheck training. It is not a training. It is a whole process. It's more than just that. So actually, what defines WeCheck from our point of view? First of all, for us, it's really important that ownership. As I was saying, you know, this WeCheck process, it ends up with an action plan where it is the organization itself, through this accompanied process with the facilitator, that comes up with items that speak to them, to their objectives, to their resources, and that helps them identify what they can really improve. It is also framed within this idea of a continuous improvement process, that a service provider can always, like us, we keep talking about lifelong learning, right? Well, it's the lifelong learning of a service provider. It is a continuous improvement process. And that idea of integrating this aspect into their monitoring and in their evaluation. So it is, you know, that's the typical circle of monitoring and evaluation that I won't go into detail. And then last but not least, for us, and this is where we're at this moment, we aim to kind of create this community of practice and learning from the service providers. So it's not someone external telling them. It is actually creating a community of practice and continuous improvement through the service providers, where they can actually exchange and learn from each other. And actually, the initial ideas of this came through Zamzam Foundation in Somalia, where we were doing this kind of knowledge sharing with organizations that were going through WeCheck in terms of, okay, let's build that community, that sense of help. So with this, I will let Suleika actually talk a little bit about their experience, because I think it's always good to hear from somebody who's gone through the process in terms of results, before I come back and just briefly touch upon scale. Suleika, the floor is yours. Suleika, you need to unmute yourself.
We're still not able to hear you right now.
Suleika, we can't hear you.
I mean, we were able to hear you before, so I know it works. No. No.
Suleika, would you like to take off your camera? Because I know you have some support in the background. If you want, Jens, what I can do is I can fast forward to the last slides, and then we can hear about the Zamzam Foundation. Oh,
I think, yeah, Suleika? I'm not sure if it's a technical or connection issue. Yes, Virginia, I would say let's do that. Let's fast forward to what you have to say about scalability. And then we will hear the experience from the Zamzam Foundation.
I think Suleika is on, you can hear her now.
Me now?
Yes, go ahead, Suleika.
Okay. I was about to say that you mentioned, Virginia, that this was WeCheck was not training. I disagree with you. We had a lot of Simple things like turn on your microphone and so on. But jokes aside, it was really a skill development experience for me and my colleagues, and we started off as six members of the internal task team, and ended up, and we had men and women. We ended up with 4 women who were conducting it, and it gave us room to do things the way we wanted to do them. It was women's business, and we got down on, and we really had very fruitful discussions, and it was indeed a learning experience. I thank everybody. Thank you very much for including me in this discussion. Yeah, I'm not very tech savvy, but thank you for your patience. So we conducted the WeCheck assessment from August of last year to March this year, and then we completed the initial assessment report and began the pilot project based on the recommendations from the report. It was a very tasking. It was very hard, to be honest. At times, it was really almost impossible. And I think part of it was the issue that you mentioned, Virginia, which is of ownership, because the tools and the guides, and regardless of how straightforward it looks, there is a process that needs to be gone through, which is which allows people to actually. There's no rushing the issue of owning this process. If it was not for the period of strategic development that Zamzam had done in 2019 and early 2020, I think it would have been harder for us. But we were in a position by the time that WeCheck came around to really absorb WeCheck, and really this was it was the perfect moment for WeCheck to come, so that we could actually implement some of the action items that we had in the strategic plan that Zamzam had developed 2020-2024. And again, this was perfect in the sense that Zamzam is the largest national organization in Somalia, and also we are at 30 years. We started in 1992. I wasn't there, but it was established in 1992 at a time that was of great difficulty. There was a drought, severe drought, if some of you remember, and also the total collapse of the central government of Somalia at that time. So no service provision at all whatsoever for people who were in the direst of need. So for the last 30 years, there's been political upheaval, the environmental disasters, I think most of you are aware. So within that context, I personally think that the women entrepreneurs, the workers at Zamzam who have worked all these years, have persisted through all these trials, have done an amazing, it's like almost beyond human feat to continue every day, to get up and to go to work while probably a bomb is exploding somewhere or something is happening. There's all kinds of issues. So just to put that out, that the context within which the Somali entrepreneurs and the service providers work is super incredible, and to have any kind of organizing around that is worth supporting. So with this reflective journey that started with the development of the 5-year strategic plan, we went into a total review of an improvement of policies, revamping the HR department, creation of new regulations, hiring of new staff. I was one of the people that the senior leadership team hired at that time in this process of reimagining, if you wish, Zamzam, to basically move a little bit outside of this constant state of emergency and meeting people's needs like floods and all kinds of droughts, and to sit back a little bit and say, where have we been? Where are we going? Where do we need to put more focus? And how are all our programs interactive? But there was no clear framework for that other than the strategic plan. WeCheck gave us a practical solution or practical jumpstart to start that journey of self-reflection. So one of the things, so we had the opportunity to assess how gender-sensitive Zamzam Foundation policies were. The strategic plan had already revealed gaps in the gender equity and barriers that needed to be addressed. For example, at the head office, we have about 50 workers, and maybe 1 year ago, we had 7 women out of all those who were in and none in really senior positions. Now since we started WeCheck, there were 7 more women hired. The HR person is a woman. Some of the changes that came about are that when we are advertising for positions, they are advertised specifically to women. It wasn't like that before. So this is as a result of this process that we went through. It's not just advertising and saying in the bottom in small letters, women are encouraged. This is a position that's hiring a woman. So these are some of the changes. If I can continue, and I know for time it's. So the challenges with the WeCheck process are financial as always, but it's more about the skills and knowledge development, usage of tools, for example, for data collection. We don't have a centralized data collection system, and that is another thing that we're implementing as a result of being involved in WeCheck. Before that, we had information on entrepreneurship fragmented and scattered across several work areas. In the health department, in the economic department, we have the peace and peace building and governance department, and also the four main departments. So with WeCheck, what we have been able to do is at least begin a process of consolidating, of getting all that different scattered information into one database. So we have some information. We have data in a database at the moment as we speak that is specifically all the women entrepreneurship programs at Zamzam, regardless of which department. So we are very proud of that, and it's hopefully something we will continue with. Some of the lessons we learned. Sorry, Virginia, you're moving to a slide. I think I may be off, moving differently from the slides that you're showing, but nevertheless, some of the lessons that we learned. You mentioned that, Virginia, as well. Unwavering commitment from senior leadership. Without that, really nothing happens, and we have a very dedicated leadership at the moment, very open, very encouraging of advice of women to be participating at a level where decision making is made, and actually not just talk but actually putting into practice. Critical need to dedicate staff, funds, and training in support of women's development. Confidence building. I heard that in one of yesterday's sessions. Women are in a different place when it comes to confidence and entrepreneurship, and that is a global phenomenon. So that needs to change, and I will mention some of the ways that Zamzam is trying to correct that. Actually, I've mentioned that now. One of it is to just create networks of women to come together and exchange information in a women-only learning process, but of course with sometimes getting experts from outside. Another thing we learned is that information is power. Need for systematic, consistent data collection, usage, and analytical progress reports to help with more effective planning and delivery of appropriate services and products. Can we move to the next slide, Virginia? We are okay.
Zulika, I think you have 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes.
Okay, action plan. To improve the foundation's capacity to advance women's entrepreneurship through development of women's skills. We found that it wasn't just financial, as I mentioned earlier. Non-financial support is sometimes equally or even more important than the financial support. So providing training, business insurance for the women, market analysis, wellness and health support, and in the case of places like fragile places like Zamzam, protecting them from in terms of security, making sure that they're safe. Secondly, a strategy to advance gender responsiveness in all of Zamzam work area. So that is the scalability. We see whatever we're doing to be something that we can move with to other departments. and not just entrepreneurship. Okay. Okay, activities implemented so far. I mentioned some of them. Strategies and tools to advance gender inclusivity in all of the different departments. So that is ongoing. But the thing is Zamzam has focused always on women and girls. So this will, it's just a matter of formalizing and developing tools so that this is now we focus more on advancing women's development in all of the different areas. Like 40% of women of Zamzam intervention in regular programming is targeted towards women. About 90% of food distribution goes to women. Women make up more than 60% of entrepreneurship training at Zamzam, and microfinance projects are also targeted primarily towards women. And about 200 projects underway now in microfinance. More than half are women-owned. And women-owned, and the main decision makers are women, because we made sure that we find that within the WeCheck process, that women entrepreneurs are those who 50% are owned 100% by women, and the main decision makers are women. To keep going, I'll have this bring us to. So successes and plans for next steps to scale, to increase, to have the centralized database also happening at other areas of Zamzam, like peace building, education, to have a common database where we can easily access information. At the moment, we don't have that because the staff are always busy with just meeting day-to-day needs. So this WeCheck actually provides us with a step back and sit down and actually reflect, which is a luxury for Zamzam. But we had that, and we are grateful for that. From January to August, as I mentioned, seven females were hired as a result of just recommendations from the WeCheck process. We'll be hiring a female focal person for safeguarding for beneficiaries as well as staff to address issues like harassment complaints. We didn't have that before. And finally, we're recommending a position dedicated to gender equity and not just leaving it to just random moments, but rather to have a plan to implement some of the recommendations that we'll be making. And I think that is all.
Thank you. I know also Virginia wanted to say something. So, and afterwards we are going into the discussion, and then you can also make your points, Suleika. We still have time for exchange.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Suleika. And before we leave the floor to Charlene, I think Zamzam's is a great example of how the WeCheck, it can take different shapes. What ends up happening, right? It's not necessarily that you develop a new product at this stage. In this case, it's been really about centralizing that data collection system and making it more visible in terms of how they're supporting women and men entrepreneurs. They say they're supporting and they're focusing on women, but now they're trying to implement a system that will actually help them reflect and make changes on that. And so hopefully in the next few years, before the next strategic objective process goes in, they can do another kind of WeCheck to kind of help them fine tune and find other areas for improvement linked to gender equality and ensuring that their service provision is accessible to women entrepreneurs. Last words from my side in terms of scale. I think for us, we're really excited in terms of how we're going to support reaching scale with WeCheck. We'll be launching very shortly with our sister organization, ITC, an online self-guided process for facilitators. So it's the idea of building that pool of facilitators that can help service providers around the world to kind of in that reflection process. We also are seeing those facilitators, because we see those facilitators as multipliers. They then also get to identify other organizations in their countries that could benefit from WeCheck processes. Currently, these are the countries that we're looking into, besides, of course, Somalia, Ukraine, etc. We see that the organizations, and we find that is very important, that learning between peer organizations and being those role models of making those small adjustments can actually have we believe can make a bigger impact than basically just someone telling them externally, okay, you need to do this or you need to do that. And again, my last point, which I had alluded to before, was that in order to get to that scale, it's that idea that in the long term, it's the idea of building that community of practice and learning of service providers, and having them through word of mouth share their experiences with WeCheck and invite them to take on these WeCheck. And last but not least, maybe the reason why we wanted to be on this panel and on this platform, it's actually to invite partners who are interested in that WeCheck to come contact us and see if we can partner to further do WeChecks. With that, I'm going to shut. I'm looking forward to the questions, and I think now it's Charlene.
Thanks to both of you for this great presentation and also having the point of view from both sides of the same product. Amazing. I know, Charlene, you are also a fan of WeCheck. What are your thoughts on it? Also, having seen the presentation right now, and as a reminder of the impact and also what is needed.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Yeah, so on WeCheck, I don't know what I can say. I think that this is a very great tool, and I'm talking now from the perspective of Africa and the African Development Bank, because the bank has committed to gender equality and women's empowerment, and this is reflected in the current strategy, which covers gender strategy, which covers 2021 to 2025, and one of the core pillars of the strategy is women's empowerment. And the reason being that in Africa, we have the half of the population, which is comprised of women, but women contribute only 1/3 of the GDP in the continent. So the bank believes that through women's entrepreneurship development, we can have opportunities where women can contribute to their full potential, to the economic growth and the prosperity of the continent, but at the same time also have some economic, social impacts in the continent, because we really want inclusive growth where the economic dividends also talk to the social progress. So this is what the bank is currently doing. And practically, how does it mean? We have our flagship program, which is affirmative finance for women in Africa, AFAWA, which works mainly with service providers through this guarantee for growth mechanism, where AFAWA supports business support organizations to deliver services to women, especially financial services to women, but at the same time also to build their sustainability, noting that we need to have an enabling environment where actors are there and markets are still functioning with or without financial input, or even technical input from the bank. And when I'm looking at the WeCheck process from the perspective of better service provision to women entrepreneurs in Africa, and looking at the service providers, for instance, I see some possibilities that business support organization can work alongside AFAWA to really unlock the entrepreneurial capacity and the full potential of women entrepreneurs in Africa. Why am I saying that? When AFAWA wants to partner with a financial institution, for instance, there is a requirement of improving the monitoring and evaluation system, and to have a sensitive, gender-sensitive data collection mechanism. So if a financial service provider is able to exhibit high level of support to women entrepreneurs with quality products and services that respond to the need of women entrepreneurs. This service provider can be included to this guarantee fund mechanism by AFAWA, where they will have a preferential financial support to, first of all, design and test products and services that respond to this need of a women entrepreneur, but at the same time also to improve their performance as a financial service provider. So this is on the financial aspects. On the non-financial aspects, AFAWA also works with enablers, women's associations, civil society organizations, all these business support organizations which support women entrepreneurs. And I think a couple of months ago, a call for proposal was released where enablers, like this time non-financial institutions, were invited to submit proposals to on how they can better support women entrepreneurs. The focus of AFAWA being on access to finance, but we also note that access to finance cannot be effective if we do not have also non-financial support, which helps women entrepreneurs to also deliver effectively and to also know how to manage the money and how to make financial decisions on all the investment that they are receiving. So we also have the scheme for supporting non-financial business support organizations. And I believe if a service provider, so he has a WeCheck action plan, for instance, which demonstrates like innovative ways to support women entrepreneurs, but to also show some long-term and sustainability. I think this service provider is well positioned to benefit from AFAWA, but to also make women entrepreneurs benefit from AFAWA through the service that they are providing. So this is what I can say, and then I will stop there to allow more time to the discussion, but happy to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In between, I was just confused if we have lost track, but you closed the circle. Thank you very much. Virginia, in the chat and also for me, there was one question raising. The thing is, you said in the beginning, okay, the WeCheck tool mostly fit for medium and small enterprises. So World Bank wouldn't be the a potential client for the WeCheck tool on the one hand. And then Merton raised the question in the chat. So we are having like a 6 to 12 months WeCheck track, and this needs a lot of capacities and resources. How can I implement that as with reduced or small capacities within my organization?
Thank you so much, Stefan. And I think that first of all, the first question, and apologies, I must have reframed, I didn't frame it correctly. What we say is that WeCheck, the organizations that use the WeCheck, so go through the 15 key assessment questions, for us are business development service providers at national level of mid-size. It is not so much for the SMEs, it's for the service providers. So in terms of the World Bank, I don't think, I mean, if they want to go through a WeCheck there, I mean, but I don't think they need it. They will be all that interested, but they can definitely contact us to have WeCheck be one of the processes that they make the service providers they work with in their projects to undertake that, for those service providers to understand where do they need to change, or what kind of changes they need to, or are they willing to make, so that their service provision is more responsive to the needs of women. Now, in terms of the question, absolutely, that is an issue, right? It is a process that requires commitment for quite a while. It's a 6 to 12 month period. You can be a small service provider. At the same time, what we're saying is, you know, you get out what you put in. And if you are truly committed of improving your gender sensitivity, if you're really committed to serving women entrepreneurs, then this process, which, as Suleika, I love how she said it, you know, it's a luxury to have that moment of reflection. So during that time, you can you take that time. Now, we've had organizations that actually had 4 or 5 people working on it. And so it is a time where they need to find times during that period to find and discuss these items. What I like about also the WeCheck is that it is not just, let's look at gender on the side. No, we're looking at really core elements of a service provider. We're looking at how they are organized, how they are looking at the future, what are their strategies, how they're doing monitoring and evaluation. And so it's touching at the core of how they work. So while it is a big commitment, I think the benefits in the long run are huge. And then linked to some of the questions that I'm seeing is that, you know, as I started off, there's a growing interest in supporting women entrepreneurs. So you can be a small organization, but if you are able to show that you are committed to gender equality, that you are making the efforts to improve your service provision, you're also positioning yourself in a better way of saying to potential donors, to potential agencies that, listen, we're about this. We will be doing the job. So that's part of what I would have to say, if I understood the 2 questions correctly.
Yeah, thank you very much. Suleika, so we have learned it's an investment and you have invested a lot, and did you get out more than you invested in?
Please unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yes, indeed. We have got out of it at least what we put quite a lot into it. So this is really task intensive, and this is you have to have the dedication, the commitment, the vision. You want to get somewhere. So the way we saw WeCheck was like this friend who was walking beside us and checking on. We know where we want to go, but some of the route is not very clear, and some ways are easier than others. Some people have gone the well-trodden path, and so they can show us a little bit how to go, but it was always this negotiation and a matter of always being conscious as an organization with a particular context, with a particular history, with where ILO is coming from. For example, we might pretend that it doesn't exist, but we've gone through in the ages, there's been colonialism, there's been, all kinds of things have happened in life. So there's a kind of a dynamic that you have to negotiate each time. There's a power relationship, for example, that is unspoken, but it's there. And when we speak about the terms and terminology, and we went through a lot discussing within our organization on terms that might just very easily come out of the mouth of organizers of WeCheck in Geneva, for example, right, Virginia? That for you it's like a norm.
Suleika,
I just want to finish this.
Sorry for interrupting you. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to finish this. So terms like gender, for example, weren't just simple for us; they were loaded. So, and equality, we don't want to be equal with men. For example, there are different dynamics and the value systems. So we had to negotiate all of these in order to go through and at least come out with something. So yes, we did come out of it being confident of where we are, what our value is, and what friends we want to keep. And we want to keep friends like Virginia.
Great. Yeah, and you also draw the picture of having a friend on site going along street. Virginia, last question to you. 15 questions you have mentioned a couple of times. Everybody wants to know where to get these questions from to solve the problems of not being gender aware in the organization.
2 things. One, write us an email at wed@ilo.org. Second of all, we're about to start it. We could possibly have a few slots for the next pilot of the online facilitators training. At the same time, we're happy to share samples of key assessment questions. For the rest, you need to be on board.
Thank you so much. With regard to time, we need to cut it here. Thank you so much to all of you guys, to the discussants. Thank you for tuning in. And I would love to see many of you in the next session, which will start in 15 minutes. we will hear about 2 World Bank studies that show how we can boost growth of small businesses in South Africa. Once again, thank you to Charlene, to Suleika, to Virginia. Thank you to Stefan. And well, once again, contact them for further information. Thank you.
Okay, we are not recorded anymore, I think. Thank you very much also from my side. It was, yeah, a lot of fun to work with you together onto this point, and I'm, yeah, really hope that we cross our ways again.
Thank you very much, Stefan.
Bye.